I'm just on my way to collect Stephan from Red Hill Station, sunny Red Hill. He's just come from Taunton. It's really sweet actually that he's coming to me. Often I make these by going to places, and I think that maybe makes it more valuable for you, especially if they're vicars and stuff. But I wanted to, I don't know, his story's really significant, and I wanted to make it look as good as I could make it. So I've lit my living room. I spent ages doing it, and now the light's getting really dull. Even this looks really dull. All right. Good to see you. You made it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a naff journey.
Just these weather causing a bit of a.
Yeah. So how long did it take?
Well, I left at 10 to 10 this morning. Yeah.
What's that? 4.5 hours.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, about that.
It's interesting. So this isn't part of it either. But a mate of mine he was a magician and a vicar. I told you about him. He asked me if he could come and film with me and ask me my story on Friday, and I've not done that. Like I've not done it. Yeah, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, because I thought I can't say no. I'm always asking other people to do that, so I can't then say no.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and it's really wrong-footed me.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I was like, at the end of it, he was asking really tough questions. At the end of it, I joked. I said, "Oh, do you think I'm still a Christian?"
Yeah.
And the thing he said to me at the end was just like, "Are you?" He said, "I think you've been taught wrong." He really challenged, and so I'm like, "Well, I'm 45, and he's saying to me, you know, he thinks that I've been taught wrong." Which was, so I'm still a little bit like insecure, I guess.
Yeah.
And then talking to you, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, how do we even start this? Because I'm still feeling a bit insecure.
Yeah, but that's a big statement, isn't it? But then, I was 38 when it finally clicked. You know, I grew up in a Christian household. You know, went to church. Obviously, went to England, not so much because of the way things were, and. And actually I was reflecting on this recently that, it wasn't until I was 38 that it truly clicked and made sense. So it does make me think, actually, the first time I gave my life to the Lord, like, was that, did I actually do that right? But I think it was right. I think wherever you are, you get met there. There's, I'm trying to think of the story now, but basically Jesus always meets us where we are. He never expects us to be it's the only faith that does that, right? Whereas like Islam and Buddhism and all the others, you have to elevate yourself the whole time before you're accepted. And it's actually no, so I think there's never a right or there is, obviously there's right and wrong as far as what the doctrine and what you get taught, yes, but I think the way that you come to Christ, I don't think there's ever a right and wrong. So for me, I was thinking, gosh, but it took me until I was 38 to really and it took me to go through a pretty dark kind of patch for me to really come to realize that.
So there's that. I grew up in a Christian home, so you did as well. And I was thinking like my faith was almost like my primary experience. So going to church, the Bible being around, something I was familiar with, all those things were quite primary. It was like, it was forming for me as a person, the way that I'd spend time with other people, other children and stuff. It was often around church-related things. I was involved in Boys Brigade. Faith was very much just in the same way that I was a school kid, I was also a Christian. In the same way that I like playing football, I was a Christian. It was just part of the thing. And then to have, going through this process and doing these videos on YouTube is quite just a way to really examine and think about who I am and more importantly, who is Jesus to me.
Yeah.
So if you said, so you're you're like early 40s or something now, aren't you?
40, yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Only just. So you would, I guess I go through these sort of processes of thinking, okay, well, what is it that, if being a Christian is about Jesus coming first, I mean, how would you define it, I guess? If you said you grew up in a Christian home, well, how would you define being a Christian? Why would you say you would only say you became a Christian at 38? What do you mean?
So I was always a Christian, and even from the point where I was consciously able to decide for myself, I was a Christian. And even when I was going through patches in my life whereby I particularly, I don't know, I would say rebellion is probably a strong word, but where I was probably a bit naughty or whatever, I would still call myself a Christian. So I've always been a Christian. And in early 20s, that's where I was then baptized by the Holy Spirit. So I kind of made that affirmation, saying, you are the Lord and Savior of my life. I want to live my life for you, kind of thing.
So go a bit slower. So what got you to that point? Because getting baptized was it a significant thing for you? To explain that whole process? Give me a bit of an idea of, who was around. Why did you choose to get baptized? Where was that place?
So it was so growing up in South Africa, obviously in a Christian family, and going to the church over there, it's a bit like what you said. It's very primary. It's just like a part of life, and there was never really any thought of life outside of that. And when I moved to England, I was 14 at the time, and obviously we came here, and life was very different to what I was used to in South Africa. It was a lot. And
what brought you here? Why? Yeah. So give me.
Give you the.
Yeah. Okay. No. Go into detail, because I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my mum and dad split up when I think it's about 7 or 8. My mum eventually married an Englishman, and he had. And actually, did he have a property in? No, he didn't have a property in England, but he wanted to come back here anyway. So they both wanted to come back here to buy a house and kind of do that whole kind of, because he did do property renovations before. And anyway, so I was a minor at the time and had to come across with them. And to be honest, at the beginning, I was a bit like, I've never been abroad. I think the only place I've ever been to up until that time was Namibia when I was really young. That was like the only foreign country, even though it's just, it was a bit like going to Wales,
Yeah.
So, really, so this was like a big thing for me. And obviously we moved around when I was quite a lot when I was young. And I just remember going to quite a few different schools. And, at the time I was set on going to this particular high school, which is in Randburg, and that's basically when everything changed. So I was how old would I have been then? Gosh, trying to think of the age now, but yeah, I would have been around 11 or 12 at the time. And then suddenly that's when my parents then said, actually, no, we're going to move to a place called Nelspruit, which is where my stepdad had another property there, and then I'm going to go to the high school there. And that was very upsetting because I felt like we'd settled in Randburg, made some friends, and and it's the first time where I was actually able to, because I was slightly older as well, but on weekends and stuff I'd go and see my friends, just have a lot more social interaction. So that was upsetting, knowing that we're going to move away again, and then have to start and make new friends. So then I moved to Nelspruit, and that's a good distance away. Started school there, started from scratch, making friends again. And I was about 2 years in, or just started actually the second year of high school, and that's when they then dropped the bombshell to say, well, we're going to move to England. So I was like, okay, so it's not just moving to a different city, it's now actually moving to a different country.
Right.
So now I'm also going to be away from my family and my dad and my brother. I think at the time we were all going to go, but because my brother was he was still finishing, I think he was in his second last year. He was going to stay behind and finish high school, and then he was going to come across to England. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock, because then it's almost like it felt very final. It's like I'll probably never come home again. You know, that's this, because we didn't have a lot of money either. So we literally, like, traveling was not a thing at all. So for me, it was like, okay, well.
I mean, you're close with your brother.
Yeah, very much so. And my brother was always like the typical big brother, but he's like I guess he was probably that constant, because he's also gone through all the same stuff I have, but in all the changing kind of scenarios or situations, that he was always there as well. So obviously, because, you know, I had a stepdad, you know, my dad's gone and his stepdad turned up, you know, like that kind of scene changed, but my brother was always the constant, and he was always very caring. So he's bailed me out quite a lot of times, especially in high school. And that was another thing as well. So we started high school, and in South Africa they do this thing called, there's like an initiation that you go through, and it lasts for about 3 months. And it was just
What do you mean initiation?
It's
Like putting gravel down your pants?
a bit, well, yeah, that and loads of other stuff. But it's basically, I mean, the ethos is that they break you down and then they build you back up again. But the way in which they do that is, I guess in this day and age, people probably get locked up for some of the stuff that they do, because you're almost in some, you're giving like the what would they be, grade 12, so that's like the year 11s of the school.
Yeah.
Free reign to kind of do whatever they want to the newbies. So you get assigned to. So I had like a grade 12 that I would serve.
Proper public.
Yeah,
boy,
and then I'd have the sign around my neck, and it'd say my name, and I'm like worthless, and I'm this, and I'm that, the other, and I have to wear a carrier bag around my head, and it's just humiliation. Like it's just the worst humiliation things that you can think of that they'd make you do, and then
an all boys school.
No, it's a mixed.
Oh, really?
Mixed,
and you have that in a mixed school?
Yeah. The girls didn't quite have it as bad as what we did, but they still had that.
Right.
But because I was then in boarding school, because my mum was still living in Randburg at the time, so my brother and I put into boarding school, and then you have the same thing in the evening, but it's very military. It's literally like 1950s England. It's all very much, you still had the cane at school. It's very kind of, is extremely regimented, and then boarding school. In the evenings, you had all your sessions, so you'd have. Obviously you go back, you'd change, you'd eat, and then you do sports, and you do homework, then you have a little break, and then there's more homework, and then you have to have lights out at a certain time, and in the mornings you'll have room inspections, you'll have kit inspections, that kind of stuff. So it's very, right. And as a grade, I think would have been grade 6 was the first grade. You'd have a lot of rude awakenings, for example, and you get taken outside and get beasted, is what we call it in the military. Very much like the same kind of thing. You just get thrashed for a bit. And then you'd have all your kit inspections. If somebody messes up, there's always a consequence, that kind of stuff.
What would the consequence be?
You'd get thrashed, or you'd get, that's mainly it, really.
When you say thrashed, would you just...
So thrashed, I mean, so physically go out, and you just have to do, like, just like PT, basically, like physical training.
Press-ups.
Yeah, and just load of stuff, but until people start crying. Sometimes you stand there with school bags like this, and you're like, and your arms like kind of, yeah, no, it's funny.
Did you cry? Were you crying?
There was a time actually where my mum dropped us off one Sunday afternoon, and I didn't want to go because it was horrible. I mean, that's just, these are just some of the things that they did. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, you'd have the games in the evening, so you didn't go down to the sports field. So for entertainment for the rest of the boarding school, because you had the girls' boarding school and then the boys. It was separate buildings, but as part of the same kind of complex.
Yeah.
And then we'd be their form of entertainment, and they would have some kind of show that we would have to then reenact, and have eggs thrown at you and have syrup put on your face, and you have to rub it in the dry grass. You have like dry grass stuck all over your face, just things like this. And then... so it was a bit of a culture shock, I think, for me. I grew up, I spent a lot of my life on the farm anyway, and obviously where I grew up, we had discipline, we had all of that kind of stuff. But this almost just, I think, to be put at the mercy of other, like, slightly older kids, and to go through that, it was a bit of a culture shock.
And being humiliated is quite different from just learning. Don't stand there because you'll get kicked by a bull. I mean, one has a safety thing, and the other is just to break you down.
It's just and that's it. And I think now it's Yeah, it's funny. We even have to have this little salute that you do. So every time you see a grade 12 for the men, you call him Sultan. So you have to do like a salute. Good day, Sultan, or whatever. And to the ladies, you had to call them Mademoiselle. It's like, good day, Mademoiselle. And it's just really, anyway. But that was the norm. You know, everybody kind of went through that at the time. But what that did do was it did kind of create friendships, like strong friendships. So then when my mum then said, okay, we're moving to England, that was, again, like another blow, because it's like, gosh, you know, I've just made some really good friends again. And I really, this time, felt that we're going to settle there. And then it's okay, well, you've got to say goodbye to everybody and family, and, you know, because I didn't know when we would see them again, because I didn't think we'd ever have the money to fly home, and, you know, and I know my dad and everybody definitely wouldn't be able to come across to England. So, yeah, that was quite tough.
What would make your dad stop? You know, why would he not be able to?
Just cost and everything else, because again, my dad's a farmer, and you know, so they had just the cost. I mean, I have been across, but it's just at the time, that was what my thinking was, because, you know, as a child, I didn't really think that far into the future, thinking, okay, maybe one day they'll come out, but, you know, but it's just that devastation. And I think, but we moved across, and we moved to Taunton, and I was, again, like the only foreign kid in the school, I think, at the time. So very out of place, and culturally there was a big difference. Just listening to the way that some of the kids would speak to the older people, to teachers and stuff, I'm like, no way, there's no way you get away with that. And back in South Africa, I was just very much taken. Yeah, so it was a big surprise.
So you were what, 14? Did you say
14?
So year 9, is that?
So just
30?
Going to year 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
right. Did you feel older or younger than other kids in your year?
So I was older, actually. I think because of the way that it worked. So was that I could have gone straight to year 11, but I had the choice. So I was told to go to year 10 instead. So I was like the oldest in the year.
Okay.
Because my birthday was like right on the very beginning of September. So it was, yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously there was physically, there was a difference as well, because I used to play a lot of rugby as well.
So you were like the strong,
strong
guy, and you used to just swat some of the kids,
some of the guys, and it's just So there was like,
what position did you play?
So I'd either play centre, so inside centre, or wing or fullback.
Oh right, okay.
So one of those.
So you were quick and big.
So yeah, I mean at the time, anyway, I know, compared to like the South African boys, and you think I was like average, and then anyway. So yeah, so then, but obviously as from like a faith perspective, we came across, and the English churches at the time were very different to anything we'd experienced back at home, because at home it was very much apostolic kind of sort of like evangelical, New Testament teaching, and there's none of the ritualistic aspect of. Yeah. It wasn't really religion as such, although there was still an element of legalism to a degree,
like Assemblies of God and stuff like that. That's what I've known in Africa. Is it that kind of thing, or? Yeah,
so we were like the AFM church formed. What's it called? I don't know. What's in English actually. Apostolic Faith Mission. It's called.
Okay.
So yeah, so they were like. So they were still, there wasn't like the ritual side of it, but I think culturally there was very much a legalism side to it, I think. And it's not necessarily just to do with the church. I think it was just because we were still in that old school 1950s kind of mindset of, you don't do anything wrong. Otherwise if you do anything wrong, you're gonna get it, sort of thing. And then obviously, like all the English churches at the time, you had, like your Catholic churches and all your kind of these denominations that I've heard about, but I didn't really know what they were about. But it was all very ritualistic. And, then I kind of, there was, I'm not quite sure which denomination it was at the time, but obviously the one where you have to kind of confess your sins to a priest.
Yeah.
And they say whether you're forgiven or not. And I was a bit like, hang on a minute, that doesn't seem right to me, because that's just a man. That's not Jesus and that's not God, so it's like, so we kind of didn't go to a church. And I would probably think a few months went by, and then there was a boy called Tom from my form, who was the first one to come knocking at my door to see whether I would go down the park on the bikes and go and hang out or whatever. And I was like, no way, that was a really good thing, because in South Africa, where we lived, we were living outside of the town, and obviously I was in boarding school, so it's a bit different, but I never really had a scenario where
you went down
I could just cycle to a mate's house, you know.
Yeah.
And Tom and I became close friends. And the thing is that he was a Christian, and they were going to a home church, just a few of them, and it's like his family and stuff. So that's kind of then what I eventually started doing, not straight away, but as we got older and left school and so on, I actually then went to that home church group as well. And that's how we kind of kept up with teaching and sharing the word and that kind of stuff.
So Tom, you were, so he's sort of best friend in over here in Devon, and I mean, how did you kind of, that faith that you had as a child and then growing up, how did that work then in secondary school? Did you do A-levels or went to college? What did you?
College. I tried college.
Really, what happened there?
No, I went for about 3 years, but it just wasn't. What I went into computers basically, and I just am not a person for sitting in an office in front of a screen. I've always been very physical, outdoors, playing rugby, doing sports, that kind of thing. So I probably did that more because my brother did that. And I was thinking, okay, well, I have to do what he's doing.
Had he come over to?
No, so not at the time. So he was doing computer. So yeah, there's like basically a big issue. So we were really looking forward to him coming over, but then there were a few issues and he couldn't come over at the time. So he ended up just staying there because he just ended up settling down and got a job and so on. And that was quite devastating, actually. I was really looking forward to him coming over. Actual fact, he did come over for a couple of years when I was about, I think I was 17, until about 19. He did come over for 2 years and then went back and just set up life over there. So, but the whole computers thing was because he was very much into that side, and because I look up to him, I said, okay, well, I'll do the same thing.
Right.
But yeah, that wasn't the best thing. But Tom was just army mad from the beginning. He was like, he's going to join the army on his 16th birthday. He's going into the careers office. He's going to sign up, and basically that was him from the moment I met him.
Oh, really?
He had cam nets in his room.
Oh, did he?
Well, very much. Yeah. So, but the great thing is he actually told me that he was hanging around with a group of kids who weren't necessarily the best group of people to hang around with, and he was just praying for somebody who also believed in God, but just somebody to come over that kind of would take him away from all of that kind of stuff. And then obviously then I turned up, and we found out we both believe as well. So that was one thing that we had in common. And then we obviously formed a friendship and became best mates. And then he joined at 16. I wasn't allowed to join, so I went to college. And then after about 3 years, I was done with college.
So why weren't you allowed?
I wasn't in the country long enough. So
really?
I had to be in the country for 5 years, before I can join.
So, but had you been allowed, you would have just joined with him?
Yeah, I went to sign up same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was already 16 then. So
right.
My birthday was before his. So.
And what did your mum think? What was the? How was that, like, out the blue? Well, how did all of that work? Because.
There's always like, well, why would you want to do that kind of question? And is there nothing else? There's so much more that you can do and all of that kind of stuff. But I think my mum was also quite supportive anyway of, if it's really what I want to do, then that's basically what she'll support me in that. But I couldn't do it at the time anyway, so I think she was a bit relieved. But my mum moved back to South Africa. So I think I went to college, finished college, and then my mum moved back to South Africa with my stepdad. I can't remember why they had to go back. So I was just here on my own then, because my brother then also went back.
Oh, right.
So it was like a period of time where it's like, okay, well...
And who did you live with? How did that work?
So this was an interesting...
And how old were you then? What, 18, 19?
Yes. Yeah, so I lived with a couple of friends of mine who I met, and they had like a room in the attic. So I was just up there for a bit. Yeah, and then at the time a girlfriend, so her parents were busy rebuilding their house. So I went and stayed there and helped them on the house as well, because I always enjoyed doing stuff with my hands. So like building work, like property renovation stuff is something I've always wanted to learn to do and whatever. So this was an opportunity to kind of get to learn a bit of the trades and.
So how were you making like ends meet then? So you're at college.
Yeah.
You did sort of like like an IT course or what?
Yeah, so it's networking and programming. It started off with networking
right.
and computer programming. Yeah, so.
But that just wasn't the thing.
No, it just wasn't the thing.
And then your family leave you. And so how are you making ends meet at this point?
So I had 3 jobs. So I was working in a Sainsbury's. So supermarket job. I was doing some data inputting for a bank in the evenings, and then eventually worked in a bike shop as well. So yeah.
What sort of mechanic?
Just bicycle. Yeah, just selling bicycles.
Oh, selling.
Yeah, selling and also doing a bit of mechanics, but yeah, mainly in a local bike shop. So I was always into cycling anyway.
So can you true a wheel, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was able to do that.
Really?
Actually, build wheels and stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we learned everything.
Lace
So
wheels. Yeah, I'm always impressed by.
Don't ask me to do it now though.
Okay, so within this kind of time of, because you kind of just bounce around at that age, don't you? In some ways, and you just have the resilience to do it. What role were you going to church on a Sunday? Were you going to any of these home groups? What was your kind of, I don't know, even prayer life like at that kind of point?
Still very much had a prayer life and reading. So in actual fact, the Bible and my faith became my guide. And I think it kept me out of a lot of trouble, basically. I mean, I had like a period where there was like a bit of rebellion, I guess, where, I was obviously I was still living with my mum at the time. And, I'd sort of come and go as I please. I think I just started college at this point in time. So I'd come home really. I'd be cycling, I was doing BMXing and things like that. So either down the dirt jumps or the skate park or whatever. So it was like, I guess there was like some form of what I would probably class as acting out a little bit. But I always had like my faith guiding me. And there was a moment actually where I just remember my mum, I got really injured. And I'm probably mixing 2 things together here, but I remember there's a time I was injured, but basically my mum was under a tremendous amount of pressure and I was adding to that pressure. And just hearing her quite upset one day that was a big wake-up call for me, where it's like, no, you need to kind of screw the nut now because you can't behave like this. It's not right. And that's where I kind of snapped back to what the Bible has taught me about how we should be as people, or how we ought to try and be as people.
Just going to press record on this thing again.
Oh yes, flashing.
Yeah. So when you say your faith kind of guides you, I get that. But would it be God's voice, or would it be what the kind of the rule book, the kind of ethics or the morals of it? What kind of relationship did you have with God at that point? Was it a knowing the Bible, you've sat through loads and loads of sermons, you've read your book or whatever, or was it like that kind of conscience bit, where Paul writes to Timothy about follow your conscience? What was it at that stage?
It was definitely a combination of both. In actual fact, there's also parenting as well. So things that I've learned, from both my parents as a child on how to be, what I've read in the Word, and conscience. I definitely have, and I think that's often how the Holy Spirit would speak to us. Is that what we think the inner voice is? Not actually, depending on the inner voice, because I always like to think that we've got 3 inner voices. One's like the Holy Spirit, one's me, and one's the devil. So it's like, but they all can sometimes sound like the same voice, as in it's my voice, but it's then having to dig down and to see, okay, what's the root of what's being kind of what my consciousness is saying to me. So is it, is it a fleshly need? Is it something that's potentially harmful, or is it actually something that's constructive and beneficial? So then that's how you can kind of determine which one it would be. But I think at the time it's very much the Word. I was very much leaning on the Word, the Bible, and what that's taught me. And so that was the guiding. That definitely was like the guidebook, I would say. The home group as well that I went to. Regular meetings there. Tom as well, because we would talk about a lot of, about scripture and, life as a Christian and the do's and the don'ts and so on. But I think my relationship with God at the time was, I was very mature as a Christian in some ways. There's still, I can only say that looking back now, but there's still a huge amount I did not understand. So it's kind of like doing the best I could. At the time. Yeah. And, but there's certain things that I was really kind of like hard on as well, as in, the whole kind of, you're not crossing a line with a girl, and all that kind of stuff. I was very much like, no, I don't want to do that, because there was like, it just taught me to kind of respect women in a certain way and not crossing a line, in order to not kind of, how can I kind of put it, the whole sex before marriage thing, and because once you cross a line, you become stupid, and you do stupid things, and it could be also disrespectful, and it's like so it very much had like a very kind of hard line on certain things. Yeah. So it's
and is that how people would have seen you, as being someone with like strong principles? Do you think, or was it more of a that was your kind of, it's just how you operated?
It's kind of how it operated. I think it was probably, in some respects, people would probably thought I was very serious or very kind of but on the other hand as well, there was also other things where I would let my hair down, for example. So I wasn't totally rigid, if that makes sense. I still lived life, and, still kind of,
And that kind of was it a self-destruction thing where you said you injured yourself? Was it like some sort of big jump or something in a skate park?
yeah, pretty much. Kind of thing. Yeah. So that happened a couple of times actually, but that's it. But obviously, because I was quite serious about BMXing and stuff, and this is something I, started back in Ramberg, and it was just so cool, and anyway, so we were always out, like learning new things and pushing the boundaries, because the aim was to try and just get better and better and better. We would visit various skate parks around the country, and the guys that I was doing BMXing with, they've been doing it for a lot longer than me, so they were like really good. They were like competing and stuff. So so I think it was just I was pushing the boundaries definitely in that respect. But it kind of, for Mum at the time, was the last thing she needed.
So Tom had joined the. He joined the army, or which?
Yeah, so light infantry.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the army. Yeah.
And then, do you lose touch with him, or what's the where's that base? Did you kind of lose? Because if he was your kind of buddy, where your brother was that previously, what happened there?
So Tom, when he joined, he went to Harrogate first. So Harrogate's like the foundation college. So he was too young to. So basically, they time it so that when you get to your unit, you're 18,
right,
or whatever. So that way you can't deploy anywhere too soon,
okay,
kind of thing. So he went there first. So we were still in touch, as much as possible, because at the time mobile phones were very kind of like prehistoric compared to what they are now. But also it was very limited, because you couldn't. Even when I joined, it's like you didn't have a phone for the first 6 weeks.
Right.
But he would come home and we'd obviously catch up and so on. But obviously I got to know his family. So his cousin Eric, I was close mates with him as well. So, that kind of, and Eric and I would also do the BMXing and stuff together. So that kind of pretty much continued, and Tom would kind of come and go as he was able to come home.
Yeah.
And then I think it was 2003 that he deployed on his first operational tour. So that was like the first time really where he was like away. And then it was like 6 months.
And what were you doing at that time? But doing the building?
So at the time I was still there, still doing building and just kind of treading water.
And was your whole aim, right, I'm doing this until it's been 5 years in country?
Yeah,
Or you would have been in country by.
I would have been, yeah. So I came in 1999. So we're not quite 5 years at the time, but basically I joined. How old was I when I joined? 21. So I kind of did wait a little bit longer, but only because of college, and then obviously, just I was trying to make life outside, and there was a time where I was not really. Well, I was kind of and ahhing of whether I want to join the military or not, whether that is the way to go, but that didn't last long really, because I was just like, no, I need to join.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just ticked all the boxes. I just wanted to, because obviously, especially seeing what Tom was up to, it's like traveling the world and he's all that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, I want to do that. I want to travel the world and keep fit and all the mates and security, as in financial security and that kind of stuff. So there was just so many boxes that it was ticking, and I was like, actually, I'll just do that.
So 2003, would that be Iraq? Second one.
That was Iraq, yeah.
So he was the first in.
Yes, so they went out on Telic 2.
Okay.
So yeah, well, no, it was 2004, wasn't it? Telic 2.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, end of 2003, I think 2004. So yeah, so Telic 2 is when he went.
Right.
Yeah.
And you thought, right, I want some of that. Was that it, or you were just like, I'm waiting anyway?
No, yeah, it wasn't actually necessarily to deploy, on tour. It was just, I guess, the lifestyle of, having, being outdoors, being active, all of that. It's more like the whole of like helping people around the world, because the army did more than just go to war zones. There's so much else going on. Humanitarian missions and whatever else, and I was like, well, actually, that's a good way. I've always wanted to help people. That's something I've noticed from a young age, is that I always wanted to do something that can help someone. If someone's struggling, I'd want to help that person. Or I don't know whether it was just like a complex or whatever, but I always felt that I wanted to kind of put myself out there for other people's benefit, if that makes sense. So, and I think the military kind of really did that. It's where that's how it was sold to me anyway, and I was like, yeah, that's
well, I guess the first question I suppose that comes to mind is who sold it? Who sold it to you then? In
just
that way,
seeing what Tom was doing,
yeah.
Tom, and obviously at the time I was doing a lot of reading on it, that was the main two actually, and then I had a few friends who were ex-military as well at the time, so it almost became like a bit of a no-brainer really.
Okay, so yeah, just walk me through a little bit of then how did you join up, and what did that look like?
So
did you pray? Were you like, God, open the door for me on this, or were you like, if you really don't want me to do this,
stop it.
Give me the best job in the world? Like, how did you approach it in that respect? Like from those, like the three voices that you said, how did you approach the decision? Or were you just like, it doesn't even matter. This is what I'm doing. This is my.
Basically, yeah. It was, and this is where I was a bit naive as a Christian, really. And this is obviously what I realised, or didn't realise until I was 38, was actually like what it means to have that kind of Christian walk, and that how, it's that relationship of like a father and a son, and but a good father, because I know not all fathers are good on, so. But it's like, if you can think of the perfect kind of parent-child relationship, it's like you would speak to your parent about something. You don't just go and do that.
Right.
But at the time, I was like, no, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about even praying about it. Well, I did have some guidance actually from one of the guys from the home group who just talked about the realities of what the Bible might say about soldiers, and just looking at the fine line that you walk in as a Christian and also a soldier, and how I can kind of guard myself against some of these things. So it wasn't. I didn't completely go like blind, if that makes sense. But to be honest, it was very much. I was very blessed. Basic training did really well. I got the best recruit at the end, so the Lord was really blessing me in that, and it was awesome. And then obviously I joined the same battalion that Tom was in, which was the 2nd Battalion Light Infantry, and at the time, so for me, I just wanted to go away. So when I walked into the careers office, actually before I joined, I kind of already knew that that's where Tom was, and I was like, okay, well, I had and also Ash was there as well as another friend from school, and I said, okay, so there's a strong pull towards the light infantry, but let's see what else is around. And I did my research, of all the different things, but the guy just said, look, if you wanna deploy, then go to the light infantry, because they've deployed more than any other regiment in the army at the time, and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, okay, so there you go, it all lines up, to ally it is then. And then when you have to put in, you go through all the aptitude tests, and you have to write down, I think you have 3 options. So you put your, obviously, first choice, second choice, third choice, just in case you don't get the first one. But I literally just put on there 2nd Battalion Light Infantry, and the guy's like, it doesn't quite work that way. You can't choose your unit, but also you need to have a second and a third. Like, what if you don't get into the light infantry? It's like, no, I'm getting in. It's like, there's nowhere else for me. It's like, it's either that or nothing.
Yeah.
So obviously got in, and then deployed to Afghanistan straight away. So literally had 2 weeks over Christmas.
Wow.
And then on a plane out.
So what year was that?
So this was end of 2006, so beginning of 2007. So yeah, it's just Herrick 5 it was. And then Tom was already out there, so we met each other out on the ground.
Oh, did you?
Cool, yeah. So yeah, but that's it. And this is where, from a faith perspective, so I was still going to that home church, and this is where, obviously, just before I went out, that's where I made that conscious decision to say, actually, I want some spiritual protection, because obviously where we're going is going to be quite hard, and obviously you're pretty much, and there's still very early days of the of Herrick, of that whole kind of campaign. So and that's where, like, okay, well, so just before I went, actually, they just did a prayer for me, asked to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. So that was kind of how that went.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And just describe that experience then. So how many people were involved? Like, what was because this stuff's kind of, I find it really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk about me and my similar experiences, but yeah, what was, had you been filled with the Holy Spirit before? What was that experience like? Did you feel like, what was the kind of setup for it, I guess?
So the setup for it was obviously the reality that I'm going to deploy, and that I want to make sure that my situation is right with the Lord, because obviously if the inevitable, I say inevitable, that's the wrong word, if the possibility of getting killed out there was a reality, so I want to make sure that my affairs are in order spiritually, and I think that was probably the main driving factor, and then so it was, I think it was there were 3 people from the home church, yeah, so 3 people from the home church, and they basically laid hands on me and just prayed, and it's a very surreal feeling, and just to try and, it's hard to put it in words, but there's nothing really like it. There's nothing really. So in the army, right, we've done some things, and you get like amazing feelings from it. Like the rush that you get from, I don't know, whatever, you've just done something really, really cool.
No, go on, say something, because I don't know what that is. So I can talk to you about the Holy Spirit. I don't know the army.
Yeah. So if you've just, I don't know, done like I don't know, like an assault on a building, or you've just done or like a night operation or whatever, and it's just like stuff from out of the movies, and you kind of, and it's just really, really cool, and then you just get that buzz, and it's just like and you're almost like cloud 9, and it's being filled with the Holy Spirit was like that, but somehow far more fulfilling in some ways. It was just like deep, it's hard to describe it, and it's and I actually often think about this, how would you describe that to somebody who doesn't doesn't believe or who's like intrigued by it. And I think that it's like a change from the inside out, that it's I was no longer, it's very transcending, I was no longer how can I describe it? I'm just going to sort of say what comes to mind. It's like I was no longer really bound. It just didn't. I was bound by something eternal. I was bound to someone that transcends time, that transcends space. The creator of all things, and I could just really feel it in the inside of me that actually I'm connected. So even if I die, I'm gonna be with God. I'm gonna go to heaven, and it's hard to describe it, but just, I guess this is what the Bible means by you put off the old self and you become new. And I definitely felt that at the time, just lifted.
Yeah.
I'd probably say that's, it's being connected to something that cannot perish. Because my body can die, everything can pass away, but whatever I felt connected to and was now a part of me was something that can never die. That's power. Not that it's a power thing, but that's Holy Spirit power. That's what he does. That's who he is. And it's it's just amazing. So I felt very kind of rejuvenated from that.
How long did that last? Like that experience, like as a memory, or I mean, you're still referring to it now. However many, 15 years later or something, more than that.
Yeah. So I guess this is the thing. So how long did it last? So it definitely lasted, a good few years, I'd say, because obviously, life is life. It's not. That you're going to get bad days where you don't necessarily feel very
I'm
connected.
still really transcendent.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's, but this is where the relationship part comes in. And I think, I went out to Afghanistan, and, I had there was no doubt in me that everything's going to be fine. I'm going to go home. I just had this real kind of like a confidence. So I'd probably say 2009. So I joined 2006. So 2009, I'd say was probably when things maybe started to change, but that could be because Tom died.
What happened?
So Tom, he was back out in Afghanistan again.
While you were at home?
So I was at home at the time. So we did that tour together, and then I promoted to Lance Corporal, went on Lance Corporal's course, and then went to a different company. And Tom then went to a different unit. So we kind of then didn't serve together as such anymore, but we still stayed in contact. So he was at One Rifles then. He then deployed back out to, he went to Iraq first with the US military, and then he went to Afghan for the second half of their tour. And then on the 25th of February, that's when he was killed. Just IED strike on a vehicle, daisy chain, took out 3 vehicles. It was it killed, I think just 3 guys died in that incident. So that was quite hard. So I was at home at the time. And we had to do his funeral, which was hard. But that year it was very much. I also got married that year, bought our first place. So there's a lot of stuff happening, all kind of at once.
And when you say you did his funeral, what do you mean by that?
It's just carrying a coffin, basically. So it's a few of us. Went back to Taunton because I held his funeral in Taunton. So we were the carriers. So
how did you make sense of that, but maybe personally or faith wise, how did you make sense of it?
I think had it not been for Tom and the faith that he had, it would have been a lot harder. But he was very I was in Kosovo actually at the time. So I went up to Kosovo with a company, and I just remember that he was out in Iraq. I just remember some of the last messages that he sent were very kind of what's the word? Not philosophical, but very. Can you use philosophical when it comes to faith? You know what I mean? Very kind of
Spiritual.
So spiritual in some ways, where it's almost like he knew something was up in some way. So it just there was obviously a lot of talk of strengthening faith in reality and that kind of stuff. So he very much knew it was a reality. He wasn't shying away from it, and he was very much making sure that, look, if this was to happen, this is nothing to do with God being hard or not, God not being there, whatever. This is just what it is. We can't live forever, kind of thing. We obviously, people are born and people die. That's the nature of things. It's just because of the fall, and anyway. So that was kind of his approach, and I think I saw him on his R&R, and he came back, and he was very, and there was a period where he wanted to buy this old, so he quite liked these really old motorbikes, the old school Hondas, like the
cool.
Scrambler type things, yeah. And there was one that he wanted to buy, but he wasn't and whether he should get it or not. And we had an open chat, and he said, "Well, Tom, you've just said that you kind of hinted on the reality that you may go and you might not come back, because at the time, like, Afghanistan really started kind of kicking off a lot more, the improvised explosive device threat and all of that kind of stuff. So is very much then weighing, I wouldn't say it's weighing on people's minds, but it's very much, in your mind that's the reality of the scenario out there. So, and I just said, well, look, if that's how you're thinking already, then just go and buy it, because you might not get a chance again, So he went and bought it, and obviously he loved it, and he's glad. But it's just the way that he was talking at the time was a bit, it's almost like he was gearing up for something like that. And maybe it's hindsight that sounds like it, I don't know, but it definitely was in the forefront of our minds that it's, if something was to happen, it's not God's fault. It's not because God did or did not do something, for example. It's just what it is. So when Tom died, yes, it hit hard. It hit really hard. But it didn't knock my faith as such, because obviously Tom's last sort of words were quite strengthening, if that makes sense. But I think as time went on, so I went out later that year. I went and deployed again for my second tour of Afghanistan. And that's when I got injured on the 22nd of October. So the year was pretty much, I went on a course as well in the summertime. So I very much had my career kind of like lined up, and it was all looking pretty good. Obviously, yeah. And then
what was the career like?
Just where I wanted to go in the military, just my whole kind of future path laid out. I wanted to go special forces. I wanted to kind of, and I was kind of heading that way. And
were you having those kind of conversations as well, or does that not happen in the military? How does it work? Like you've got to aim. You want to, excuse me. You've got an aim. You want to, like any career, I guess, in that respect. How do you line that up? Like, what does that look like? And was that something, again, you were praying about? Was it something you'd brought faith into? Or was it quite separate? Like, this is career, this is what I want to do. God, open the doors for me.
Just do it, basically.
Yeah.
And this again shows a naivety when it comes to faith. And obviously, yes, God does bless us in certain things, but obviously, if it's a definite no, it's a no. For various reasons. Like, we can't always see where things are going to end up. So to us right now, something looks good, like a child. There's a load of puddings in front of a child right now in this moment. That looks like he can eat all of those puddings, and it looks like it's going to be a good thing. But he doesn't know that half an hour later he's going to be sick. Whereas God already knows that. It's like So I did pray about it, but I kind of still went, and I went on the summer course, and I was injured on that course. I just pushed as hard as I could. I completed the things I was on, but I was just too slow on 2 occasions, and then I was red carded basically. So they told me to go back, sort, because my knee I tore, like MCL, whatever, it was massive, and the officer who's in charge just said, look, go back and, well, actually it was a bit of a joke really. He said, oh, so what happened? And we just spoke about it all, and he sort of said, oh, who dares wins? And I laughed and I said, oh, not in my case. This time we sort of had a chuckle, and he said, look, what's happening next? And I said, well, my unit wants to they want to send me on juniors, to become a full a corporal, because I was a lance corporal at the time, and I really wanted to go down that route. I was probably a bit young, but I was barely in my unit for 3 years, so it was probably a bit early to push for something. But obviously I've done other things already that kind of meant that they said, okay, well, you can go and try and see how you get on, but ideally you need to have a good bit of experience under your belt, be like a corporal or whatever, and then go and do that sort of course, because it's it's like literally just the learning curve like that. And he sort of said, no, don't do that, because otherwise you might not come back. He said, go and get yourself sorted out, get your paperwork in, and come back on the next one. And that's kind of like the idea, was that I'll do that. But obviously my unit had other plans. So we had, how do I talk about this without exposing people too much? Well, basically we had an agreement before. So the stuff we didn't cross over was slightly different to the normal kind of military thing. So it's off the back of that the guys went, well, look, if this is what, so I had an interview with the career management officer, obviously told him what my aspirations were.
Yeah.
And that's basically where the idea then came from. He said, well, actually, why don't you go for it now? Because, obviously you go as a 3 rifle soldier, and then if for whatever reason you don't pass, then, because initially I wanted to go to 1 rifles, so I can train up and then go on selection once, I've kind of felt that I was completely ready for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was like, no, do it now. If you come off, then you can get your transfer to 1 rifles, and then you can have another go. So that's the agreement that we had at the time. And my OC, who's the officer commanding of a company, agreed. So obviously I then went, and the CO was ex SAS, so he just came in. So I had a good chat with him about it, and he's like, well, yeah, you should be fine. You've obviously, because as a unit, we were always, a lot of fitness, a lot of kind of skills training, a lot of that kind of stuff. So he's like, yeah, you should be fine on the course, and obviously wish me all the best. And then obviously when I came off, we had a new OC at the time who then said, no, that's a deal with your old OC. You're going to come to Afghanistan with us. And I was like, right, okay, but I missed a lot of the pre-deployment training at that point in time, and the landscape completely changed out there from the last time I was out there. So I had to like sneakily try and learn things, because I was a lance corporal, so I was a 2IC, and obviously I can't demonstrate to the guys, they can't figure out that I don't know certain things, because how are they going to trust me?
Sure.
So anyway, but there was a lot of backwards and forwards between the OC and myself, where I was like, well, that was not the deal. The deal was obviously I'll go to 1 rifles, because that's all I wanted to do. And even the sergeant major at the time said, look, sir, if he died today, the company's going to function tomorrow. We don't need him like that. And then, but obviously at the time, I guess, that's the thing, isn't it? And this is always the danger, is that sometimes they don't want to let you go, kind of thing. They want to take you with them. So. And then the OC was just like, look, I'm not having a lance corporal tell me what to do. You're coming, and I was like, okay, that's fine. We'll do that. And obviously the year as well that we've had with Tom, that was still very much fresh in my mind and all that kind of stuff. And it's not like I wasn't using that as a means to get away from it, but it was just like when I had my mind really set on getting in for a start, but I had my mind, but obviously in the back of it, there's always a chance that you might not get in. So many things can go wrong. But that's all I was driving towards. And then to have a complete reversal on that from somebody I didn't even know, who just comes in and obviously take this attitude of, well, you're a lance corporal, I'm a major, I'm not going to listen to you, kind of thing. that was like annoying.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So anyway, but then I just said, look, obviously at the end of the day, it is your call. Even the CO, because I had to go and have a meeting with him again, and he just said, look, I'm happy for you to go to One Rifles and try again, but obviously he said, but it is your OC's call. So obviously I went back to the OC and he's like, no, you're coming. So I thought, okay, that's fair enough. So I had to then quietly learn everything in the background to make sure that I'm up to speed with it all. And then, so then we then deployed in September. And then on the 22nd of October, I was injured. So stepped on a improvised explosive device. And the first thing, I thought of at the time when the explosion went up was, obviously I was thrown in the air and everything was blocked out and I couldn't see or hear anything. But I didn't think it was me that set the device off. I thought it was somebody else, because I didn't feel any pain initially. And then it was, I saw, and then the pins and needles go through. It's like a really weird feeling, almost like somebody's giving me a dead leg, so to speak, quite literally. But and that's when I looked down and I was like, obviously just a bit of bone sticking out and my leg was completely gone, and it was horrific. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I think the first thing that I thought of at the time was, just the devastation of not being able to go and try again. I was like, there goes my career. There goes all of that out of the window. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to be. And it's like, now it's gone now. And it's like, in that moment, trying to, I've got no choice now. I have to accept this because, I can't do anything about it. Kind of is what it is. And then there's just going through, okay, let's see what else is missing. Just kind of just remaining calm, knowing that the guys will come and sort me out. And then, just checking out my hands, and I'd like wounds and open fractures and stuff like that. And, it's just all of that going on at the time. So, and then, that was like the beginning of the next chapter, really.
Okay. So now we're on chapter 2. The stuff we see in films and things and everything else, kind of those moments are often like just, what do the military call it, kinetic, right? Are you able to sort of, you lost your best mate, you got married as well.
Yeah.
You've done almost like a taster of the course.
Yes.
That right? That's kind of. There must have been more that was going on, So all of the readying and the preparing to return to Afghanistan. You've heard all these stories, but more importantly, you've just lost your mate there that year. So, there's that excitement of going, sure, right? You're going back, you're going to be... So what was the kind of... What happened maybe that day? Like, was it... What was the... I know you can't tell me stuff that might be... as you said, might stitch someone up or just you're not allowed to talk about. Because I know from other people, you can't talk about stuff when it's gone terribly wrong and stuff. But what can you talk about? What kind of day was it that day? What kind of time was it on the 22nd of October?
The time, I think it was afternoon. I think it was about 4:00 in the afternoon. But the day in itself was, I think it's interesting. So just going back to the moment where I realised that that there was no so when the OC made that final decision, it's funny because then it's the switch and the mind just goes. Then it's like, okay, let's park future plans. Then it's like head in. Okay, go on
job
tour,
to do.
and that's it. And then you're in business then.
Yeah.
So yes, you then do have that whole kind of, the build up and all that kind of, okay, well, I'm going to go and do my job. But there was an element of, I guess, so Tom died. A lot of guys that year, obviously the casualty rate was increasing quite a bit then because of the IED threat. But I didn't really reflect too much on Tom. There was an element of, okay, well, it would be good to kind of go out there and kind of like do my bit. But there wasn't really the time to kind of focus and reflect on all of those sorts of things. But up until that point, so, you know, I was one of the two ICs, so we just got to the ground. So I was out on most of the patrols at the time. So we were doing quite a lot of patrols. And it was a lot of familiarization, and obviously just because the way that things were, there was like the NATO forces were holding quite a bit of ground, but they were obviously in Sangin area. It was very, very dense with Taliban population as such. So the drive was going to be to try and clear that area and push them out of there to bring kind of stability back, because the locals were really suffering as a result, because they couldn't, the kids couldn't go to school, they couldn't have doctor, medicine, stuff like that. Is very much like, because it's all against the Taliban's kind of rules, as such.
Yeah.
So it was busy, but the day just started. Actually, in fact, the day before was really when everything kind of started, because I had a message. We got back in from patrol, and I had a message to go and call Sadie, who was my wife at the time, which is unusual, because she kind of knew, okay, well, when I'm out there, I'll contact her when I can.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
No.
Unless there's something seriously wrong.
Sure.
So at the time, I'm like, okay, well, what's happened? So when I had a chance, I went and phoned her, and she had tested positive. I think she had like grade 3 dyskaryosis or something, like cervical cancer or something like that.
Oh,
so
wow.
something quite serious, which is why she phoned me.
Yeah.
But they have said that they're going to try and laser it and all of this kind of stuff. But she didn't want me to not know, because she had to go in for the treatment imminently. So she was like, what do I do? Do I tell him? Do I not tell him? And then obviously everyone's like, look, you better tell him, because if for some reason it doesn't work, he's going to be pretty annoyed that you didn't tell him. So so she did the right thing, and she told me. But that obviously played in my mind a bit, because initially, I was thinking, great, there's just like another thing, and initially I wasn't going to be here, so I could have been there to support.
Yeah, right.
And whatever, but now I'm kind of out here. I don't know how long for, because initially I was told I wouldn't be doing the whole tour, so I don't know whether that might be exposing people too much. I don't know. But anyway, so went to sleep, had a weird dream, which you could now say is a premonition, where in the dream, obviously I prayed about it at the time, but in the dream, I was blown up, and it was almost exactly the same as what happened, apart from the vehicle was different. So in the dream, we got to an area, and we got out of the back of a snatch Land Rover, which is like the old school soft skin kind of whatever. And I was injured just behind us, was walking to the vehicle. So obviously I then woke up, and then I was pretty like, hang on a minute, pretty distressed at the time.
Yeah.
The morning, that morning actually started off pretty rough, I'd say. But obviously, again, you got to get your head in your game. Got head in the game. Got everything, all the kit sorted out, ready to go on patrol. So we should start hammering the patrol. So, once we were out there, things kind of like settled down, if that makes sense, because then you focus on the job.
Yeah.
And it was all pretty quiet. And then we just got to like this hill, and where we had to go like an all-round defence. It's like a defensive circle, all looking out. So we got 360-degree vision of what's going on, while the other section, they were kind of like moving through the valley beneath us. And I was the second in command of that multiple at the time. So my job was, so the ID threat was just through the roof at the time, and this is what slowed it all down, because we had guys with detectors that would clear the ground in front of us as we go.
Yeah.
But then they had to clear each position as well. So I'd literally walk behind them and place the guys out while they're clearing. And then once they cleared the perimeter, they then clear the inside of that hill, basically, to make sure the whole hilltop's safe. So, I think they've gone over it twice. And then we had a quad bike with a trailer that had a load of ammo and stuff on it. So that pulled into the middle of this all-round defence. So yeah, by the time I've checked in with all the guys, and then I walked to the middle to go and take my position. And as I got close to the quad bike, my left foot just set the device off. So yeah, that was basically how that kind of day went. But yeah, so it's a pretty kind of standardish day up until that point in time.
Oh my goodness! But the day before.
Yeah, the day before that was a busy one.
And how was your wife as well?
Well, that's the thing. I've not heard from her then, because I spoke to her on the phone the night before, and then I wasn't able to speak to her again. So, so she, I don't know when they phoned her. Oh no, they didn't phone her. They had to visit her to tell her that I've been injured, because that's kind of how it is. But everything kind of all phones, everything closed down. If something like this has happened, it's obviously OPSEC, to make sure that wrong information doesn't get leaked out there. So I think like nobody could, there's no way she could find out until she was visited by officers. Yeah, so there was a period of time where obviously I would have been going through all of this, and she would have been none the wiser back at home, dealing with her own battles. So,
oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So, so this IED, sort of, what happened? What happened with that? What in terms? You said before chapter 2, you said you looked down.
Yeah.
But what were you blown into the air, or what was the physicality of it?
Yeah, so I was thrown in the air, and it's like the best way to describe it is, it's like being struck by a bolt of lightning. I've not been struck by a bolt of lightning, but you know when thunder's right above your head and it's like really loud, and it's just sort of that instantaneous kind of thunder. That's a bit what it was like. It just, it just hit me pretty hard. It threw me in the air. And then I hit the deck, but everything was just blocked out. There's just dust like everywhere, really thick, because the dust is quite, the ground was quite sort of stony in a way. There's lots of rocky, kind of dry, arid kind of desert land, but the sand in between is very fine.
Right.
So it was just one big dust cloud. But initially I didn't know it was me. You know, I thought I got caught in the blast of somebody else. I was just like lying there it felt like a while, but it obviously would have been seconds, I guess. And then that's when the sensation went through my body. I could hear the platoon sergeant getting on the radio, and he was like, right, wait for the dust to settle, Valor men, you need to get around. So I think he was already aware that it was me before I was. Because then he was obviously just briefing the guys on dust settle, Valor men, you know, you need to get up, you need to clear the ground again, that kind of stuff. And then I had the feeling going through, and that's when I looked, and obviously the devastation hit. And then at the same time, but I was in a crater actually, and which is also another reason why I couldn't really see anybody. And then I had just blood. I was just, the rate it was coming out was phenomenal. It just almost filled this crater, almost, I would say instantaneously, but it was pretty quick. And the pain was something that was just, it's hard to describe it, but it was just ripping through my body. It just severe stinging, crushing, you know, obviously it was something I've never felt before. It was excruciating. And obviously I was waiting for the guys, because obviously my hands at the time were all like mangled, like I'd been through a blender, I had an open fracture and stuff like that, so I couldn't really do anything. I had my thumbs, that's about the only thing I could use. Wow. And so I just unpicked, my helmet was choking me, so I remember unpicking that. I had like blood in my face from a cut on my head. And then my glasses were all like crisscrossed because they saved my eyesight, so I took those off. And at that point I was like, well, if we're getting shot at now, I really don't care. You know, just like if they hit me, then they hit me kind of thing. So I took that off. And then, so initially after thinking about like the career and that kind of stuff, that's when I was thinking about family, and that's when I thought about Tom, and then I could feel myself draining. I could feel that I was dying, and my life was kind of just like being sucked into the ground beneath me. And that's a moment where I prayed, and I was like, God, please, you know, I need some strength here. I need to stay awake. You know, I can't die here, not like this. Because obviously Tom's only just died. You know, Sadie's going through what she's going through. You know, her dad also just had an organ transplant. Like, it's all happening, and I was like, I can't. And there was an answer to prayer, because you know, the moment I prayed that, you know, I had like a bit of energy in me, just enough to kind of stay awake, and you know, considering how much I was bleeding as well. And yeah, the guys did a great job. I mean, they couldn't quite, because of the nature of the the wound on that left leg. They couldn't really get the tourniquet on. They got it on, but it wasn't proper, because the angle of the wound was almost, well, yeah, it was an angle, kind of, you know, just completely ripped.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously all the other bits they could sort out, but and then the guys were getting me on a stretcher to run me in. I think we must have been just over a mile outside of the FOB, the forward operating base.
Yeah.
And then the fire support commander, a guy called Ish, sergeant, brilliant bloke. He just came bombing across in a Jackal, which is like an open top fighting vehicle. And he's like, "No, get him on there. We'll drive him in." So they put me on the back of that, and then they got me into the forward operating base, into the little sort of field hospital there, like a little tent, and that's where the doc could then kind of, you know, patch me up a bit better and give me a bit. You know, I had morphine at the time, but it wasn't really doing anything. So he's giving me some stronger stuff, I think.
And yeah. You've lost loads of blood at that point as well.
Yeah, so I don't know how much I lost at that stage, but it took 48 units of blood to get to Selly basically. It's from point of injury to Selly. So it's a 12-hour period. So I think the body takes, 8? Or something like that, 8 units.
Oh my goodness.
Something like that. So yeah, it was a lot of... So I had so many other people's blood just basically going through me at the time. Yeah, so it was a lot. And I contracted pneumonia as well, and swine flu.
Oh, did you?
At the same time, yeah. So I had... so I was in a pretty bad way. So I, you know...
So you were flown from Afghanistan, from that FOB... What was then the journey?
So the Chinook came in. So it's it's called MERT, Medical Evacuation Response Team. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, anyway, so they came in. Again, amazing people. So I think it's 34 minutes from point of injury to when I was picked up by the helicopter.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty quick. And on the back of that helicopter, that's like a mini hospital in there. So they could already start doing a lot of stuff. And, you know, so they flew me to Camp Bastion. So then at Camp Bastion, they've got a hospital there, so they could then start initial surgery. And that's when I had a message via the Padre from Sadie, because by this point she's found out. Excuse me. And that was it. And then they have, and then from there it's an Aeromed, so it's like a C-17 Globemaster, so it's like a big aeroplane. Again, it has a hospital in the back. So they put on a flight to get me back to the UK. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, flew me back to Birmingham. And then I was at Selly Oak then. So that's where I did my initial treatment at Selly Oak. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was pretty, you know, but obviously I wasn't aware of the pneumonia thing until I woke up in Selly Oak, and I had the machine breathe for me and stuff. So I was being completely on life support. And then they said, well, look, we just don't know. We just don't know if you're going to make it because they couldn't give me anything else, because if they give me any more than what they have, I'm going to die. So they kind of, we need to see whether I'm able to pull through based on what they've already given me for pain relief and to obviously fight the pneumonia and stuff like that. So,
and how with it were you at that point?
I was kind of like in and out. So I was conscious until I got onto the back of the Mert, and that's the time when I thought I was actually I'm going to die. That was the first, because on the ground I was fading, but obviously I prayed and I was strengthened for a bit. But on the back of the Mert, I was like, no, actually this is worn off now. I'm, and I made my peace, and I was like, I'm dead. And then I managed to, I don't know how, but I managed to somehow get the medic's attention, to tell her that I can't hold on. And she was like, that's okay, we've got you now. And that was it. So then I remember had a memory from waking up in Bastion Hospital when the Padre spoke to me. And then I remember having a memory. That's the thing, there's so many and I don't know what's real and what wasn't. But I remember one from the back of the aeroplane. I remember being blue lighted from Birmingham Airport to Selly Oak. And actually I remember saying to the paramedic that I've never been in an ambulance before. Something like that. It's just bits. And then obviously the next thing I opened my eyes and Sadie was like standing there. But then I still, even though I knew that I'd been injured, I obviously didn't know the severity of my injuries, because I was like, okay, well, the nurse said that we when you turn up, we can go home, kind of thing. So very much had that. My mind was still very much in the field, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about the pneumonia until they said that. And obviously they told me that. So okay, well, we just have to see how the next 24 hours go. Pulled through, and then showed signs of improvement, and that was it. So how long did I spend? This was 9 days in intensive care. But I was at Selly Oak itself for 3.5 weeks, and then went to Headley Court, which is the recovery centre.
Not far from here.
Yeah.
And how long were you there for?
For just over 4 years. Yeah. So, a bit of a journey, that one. Yeah.
And when we were talking about when we were kids and faith being primary, being a primary thing, where was God in this?
What, throughout all of this? Or?
Yeah, this whole time.
So, I very much still with me. So I think there was, so while I was at Selly Oak, that's the thing, is having someone that I could rely on that's actually able to make a difference, if that makes sense, throughout all of this. And that's, because people can let you down, people can do certain things, whatever, but I think it's the hope that came with my faith that this is going to be all right. But at the time I was praying a lot for my legs to regrow. I was like, God, please give me a miracle. I need a miracle now. I need my legs to come back. I need to come back. I want to be back in the military. I want to kind of, so I was really praying for that. And obviously every day it was like, no, no. So it was very kind of, I guess it was mixed, but predominantly there was, I had a lot of hope, because that I'll get through this. And not only God to be able to really help me kind of get through this in a positive way. And it's very much was so. My recovery started off really well. Physically, I was recovering extremely quickly. I think given how unwell I was, it was still the fastest turnaround they've seen from somebody being able to go to the loo independently and, use a wheelchair to then go to Headley Court. That was, like I said, it's 3.5 weeks. And I did some standing up as well with some makeshift prosthetic legs, so it's like,
And was that just because I know that you've cycled the length of the US and more than that. So I know, and the small things I've tried to do, I know it takes a lot of head strength. You're a hard bastard into anyway, right? Or would you say that is down to your, where does being a hard bastard mix with your faith in that respect?
I think it goes hand in hand, because I think, my faith is definitely what kind of adds to that. So had it not been for my faith and knowing that, well, nothing can happen to me unless God wills it, and if God wills it, it's for a reason. He's going to get me out of it as well. So that's gives like an element of confidence. Not that I'm deliberately going to go and cause trouble, because then there's also consequences. If my son deliberately starts a fight, I'm not going to necessarily, this means that, hang on a minute, you started this. So, but obviously when things happen, it's having that confidence. And I think, obviously my upbringing definitely played a part in my outlook, but also in the resilience that I did have. There was an element of, okay, well, this is what it is. Crying's not going to help. I remember this as a child, actually. Every time I hurt myself, it was like, okay, well, let's just keep calm. Your body's going to need the strength to heal itself. So it's pointless screaming, it's pointless, whatever. Just, so I kind of had that same kind of approach in the hospital. So I need to just... And
do you think you were even like that when you were injured?
Yeah,
when you were blown up?
I didn't kick or scream or anything while I was just lying there, just thinking, right, preserve your strength, because
even though the pain was...
Yeah. So I just preserve your strength, because you're going to need to, you're going to need it. You're going to need it to be able to get through this. So, and I think it definitely, that's it. I mean, I can be confident because I've got God with me, and if you've got the creator of the universe on your side, then you can't get anybody bigger in a playground to back you up, can you?
But there must have been a point where God felt distant, or there must have been a point where, Headley Court, that was a long time.
Yeah.
There must have been a time where... So looking at it, and I hate the expression devil's advocate, but looking at it from my point of, completely out of it, you'd lost your best mate. Your wife at the time had to have immediate response to a cancer thing, and you were almost killed, and you had your legs taken. So how did you reconcile God? Or is that not how you see God? So for me, and I go through different stages of thinking like this, but your experience, your friend's experience, your wife at the time's experience, were all together. When people would watch this and think, well, how do you just, Rambo it through? How?
Definitely didn't Rambo it the whole way through. There were definitely some moments where, I think, okay, God will, why? Why have you allowed me to go through all of this? Especially when I really kind of come to the realization that everything that happens to me had to have been allowed by him. And that was like, hang on a minute. So that means you've allowed all of this pain and suffering. Why? Why can you not fix this? You've put me through this, fix this, and it's like kind of going through. Yeah, so I definitely had moments where I was angry, I was disappointed. It's human. That is completely human to have those moments.
Of course it is.
And I definitely didn't have, it wasn't plain sailing the whole way, I think. But God, in all of his grace, when I go through those moments, it's almost like the kid going, no, I don't know, that kind of angry. And then after a while, kind of, you can just feel the warmth, and then, and then just him kind of, just an element of comfort, and then reassurance, and then the hope comes again. And then it kind of brings an element of healing, I suppose. But I think despite that happening, I still ended up distancing overall for a period of time. And it wasn't really to do with the fact that, it wasn't to do with the anger and stuff. I think it's just because of how I then set my life up, because then things started going at like a million miles an hour. It's Headley Court, and then it was starting a business, and then it was family, and then it was, before we knew it, I had 4 kids, and it was just kind of like everything was just kind of going one after another. And my wife at the time wasn't a believer, so I would still like read and pray and whatever, and she'd be happy for me to do so. But then, not many of my friends, so I then lost touch with the whole church group thing, and so I was isolated.
Yeah.
And when I was isolated spiritually, I then started growing colder. I never gave up on my faith. I never denied God or anything. I was always Christian, and if somebody asked me, I'd always talk about God or whatever. But my prayer life and my reading life, everything kind of dwindled. And as that dwindled, I definitely had this kind of mental health aspect that then started kind of picking up to the point where I then became severely depressed. I started chasing after things to try and fill a hole that was like that was in my life. Thinking that maybe that hole was left there because I'm no longer in the military. Excuse me. I had a big chip on my shoulder because obviously of where I wanted to go in the military, and I never got the chance to try again. And so there was a lot of like anger and disappointment, and there's a lot of these things mixed in. And the very thing that helped me through life to begin with, I wasn't really leaning on that at all.
But then because there wasn't that, it wasn't about you were no longer doing the jumping off the off the half pipe or whatever, or wondering where you were going to live, or helping someone build a house. It had changed. It had stopped. What? I'll just quickly sort out the camera, because this is the pain of having this one. You'd got to a stage where, in your faith, and I think when you're a kid, your faith kind of accompanies as much as it leads. Maybe so much is new, so much is unknown, that. Like your dependence on God kind of accompanies movement, maybe. That's certainly how I've seen. And the older you get, the less movement there is in life, often. Certainly as you get older and older and older, very often. And that was something that drew me to motorbikes. I was like, I want to keep on moving, right? So you've gone through this kind of healing process. I've forgotten the word at Headley Court.
Recovery. Yeah.
And then you're at home. So what was that? Is that partly what's going on, that your faith accompanying movement and progression and growth might seem a lot more natural with that than it does when you're like, I'm still having to recover. I'm not moving the same way.
Yeah, totally. And I think, if you expose yourself to more things, you're more likely you're going to need help, and I think...
Yeah, sure.
But the changes were, it wasn't just getting used to life without legs. It was, everything changed. And that's the thing, the home environment changed. We lived in a flat at the time that had no disabled access, so we moved into my mother-in-law's lounge for the time being while we're then house hunting. And that's stressful as it is anyway, over Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And it's just trying to find a house. And it took us a few months to find a place. And And then obviously the backwards and forwards from Headley Court. Headley Court was, and that's the thing, Headley Court was an amazing place. It's such a state-of-the-art facility, but it was a very, in some ways it's very sugar-coated too, because it's a very clinical environment. Everything's geared up for disabilities. Everything's geared up to help you with your disability. You've got very smooth floors, you've got handrails, you've got all the help you could ever want, and when you get home, you've got none of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it is so there was always so Headley Court was very much was an escape from reality. And then when I went home, that was reality. And then it started adding children into the mix. I think we literally moved in to the house obviously we didn't, we kind of we had to work out how everything was going to kind of work when I was in hospital, from dynamics, within the marriage, roles within, husband, wife, family, all of that, had to really rediscover everything. And we certainly didn't plan specifically on we wanted children, definitely, but we didn't expect it to happen so quick. So obviously when I found out that, we're pregnant, and it's great, and all of that kind of stuff, we're we haven't got a house yet.
How old were you then?
Yeah. So, but we managed to get a place. We moved in that April and that October. My first daughter, was born, my eldest. Yeah.
So how old were you at that point?
I was 24, 23.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, yeah. 24. Yes, it's 2010. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So, but then I think what started getting to me was the pressure of going home and the reality of living with a disability, because simple things were difficult. I couldn't just make a cup of tea. I couldn't just go to the loo. I couldn't just do anything, because there's always some kind of battle involved to do that, because of the nature of my injuries at the time, still being quite fresh. And now suddenly I'm also a father, and my head was very much just kind of exploded with the change of everything. And also then just the sadness, because the guys were still out there. They were still kind of by that point, were they back at that stage? Yeah, they were back at that stage, but they were still leading up until that point. Had another good mate of mine was killed. So just a load of stuff going on still in the background, with the guys being there and me not being there and not helping, and that kind of there's just so much pressure, it was very hard. But then I didn't really, like I said at the time, it's almost like I became so preoccupied with what was going on that I didn't really focus on the Lord as such. I didn't really actually go to God with many things to say, actually, Lord, can you help with this? This situation is something that you have allowed. Can you help with it? Whatever. I didn't really. I was just trying to do it in my own strength, basically.
Yeah.
Things then kind of went a bit pear-shaped mentally, because it was just so much to try and take on all at once. And then I kind of went through a bit of a wobble. I then had a mental health breakdown, but it's all to do with change, isn't it? And it's all the fallout from that, because people didn't know how to treat me. It's just, just so many little things. I say it's little things, but it's just so many things that come to mind now as we talk about it. Just going home and just being going into town, and at the time, obviously, every Afghan was in everybody's minds, because it was still very much going on. So it's kind of obvious who I was, and I couldn't escape it anywhere. What's happened or whatever. And I go to town and people treat me differently, and they come and talk to me, and I kind of, and I'm just this sort of guy. Look, I just want to get on. I just want to kind of quietly just get on. So I couldn't just live my life normally.
So people would literally just stop and want to talk to you, or tell you what they thought.
Yeah. But I know they mean well. So obviously at the time I'd be friendly as well, because they're only trying to be friendly, and But after a while, it's especially if because I'm also on a lot of medication at the time as well. It does become quite wearing. I can't just go and have a cup of tea without something going on somewhere, or somebody coming to interrupt or whatever. And it was, and I guess just that reality of. Now being disabled and the learning curve of living with this disability compared to what I expected to have. And I think that's the bit that really kind of messed me up a bit. And then obviously responsibilities of being a father and not being the father that I wanted to be, because obviously I never anticipated I would not have legs, you know. So a lot of the stuff that I've, I don't know if most people do this when they think about having a family, but as a, when I started thinking about family, I was thinking, okay, well, it'd be great to, one day I'll teach my kids how to swim and ride a bike, and we're going to build this and we're going to do that, and you just get like this whole kind of list in your head, and I can't do any of these things, so you're not going to have much fun. And that was quite hard. So I think mentally I definitely took a bit of a dive, to the point it put a lot of strain on, and then it nearly broke the marriage apart. And I was just also then trying to escape, but fortunately I had a lot of good people around, and eventually I was like, when I got to the complete breaking point, that's when I thought, okay, actually I'll go and get help, because I'm about to kind of lose the things that actually mean the most to me, which is my family. And at that point in time, they're also going through this, the same as me, but I'm kind of adding stuff to that that's not really very fair on them, only because, I don't know how to deal with this. There's no manual on how to deal with, this is what you do when you're blown up. There's no manual. So obviously I was having to learn as I was going. So then started going to therapy, which helped a lot. We kind of got out of that, got around that cycle. That's that cycle of change, so to speak, where, got to a stage where I was able to look forward again. You just have that drive again and think, okay, the ambition started coming back. And
how did that happen? How did you get to a stage where, because that doesn't happen just as a, like, oh, it's Tuesday, does it?
No.
How? Because, that you couldn't even go to town. That for me is really like.
Yeah, people just didn't know what to say or do. It's just like, we don't say or do anything. Just
keep going.
Just get on with your day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very alienating.
Yeah.
I think. The thing is with me is that I've always been quite driven. I was never really. I never really liked just settling, and then, okay, well, this is good enough. That's it. So even though I was going through the difficult time in my mind, and I was kind of doing things that afterwards I'm thinking, gosh, was that really me? There was still an element of me of thinking, right, well, I can't leave it like this, because this is not quite good enough. This is not quite, I sort of like demanded a bit better of myself. And I think when things started kind of when I started coming out of that cycle, life actually calmed, it steadied. I didn't say calmed down, but it steadied a bit. And therefore I was able to actually then focus a lot more on things that really actually meant something. And obviously we had the business, but then that was kind of sustainable. That was kind of going pretty well. And then, obviously we started getting a grip of family life and how it works from a disabled perspective. So things were kind of settling overall anyway. And then it became about, experiences, family experiences. Okay, so we can now do things that we wouldn't have been able to have done had I still been in the military. So, let's go on, I don't know, holiday to such and such a place. Let's take the kids to like Lapland or whatever, so it kind of then became about doing the things that otherwise we would not have been able to do. There was also a lot of, Headley played a big part as well with a lot of the Paralympic kind of sort of programs that were going on at the same time. So there was always some kind of sport or something to do that is like, I guess it kind of ticked the box of that physical activity, something that I can improve on, that I can, push hard and kind of develop.
Yeah.
So, but cycling was always the thing that I really wanted to get back to. So, we kind of then found a way to make that work.
What was that process?
So there was a guy, so one of the lads actually showed me this knee it's called the Bartlett tendon knee, and a guy using it in the States, a guy designed it. So I then looked into it a bit some more, went and spoke to the prosthetics department, and they said they've seen it, but they obviously couldn't get it because of, I don't know, all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
So I then reached out to the guy, explained who I was and where I was, and that there's a few guys who were interested. So, put the two departments in contact, and then before you knew it, I had a leg turn up, and then the guy actually flew over with a few of his guys to come and do a demonstration day, and that was awesome. So, and then they started getting the legs in at Headley Court. So, and it's a leg that it enables me to do mountain biking and road cycling, well, anything to do with bikes really. You can ski with it as well and snowboard. Not that I've done that yet, but that was a game changer for me to get that, which is why then I kind of then focused more on the cycling, but then also business. And this is another thing where I kind of started chasing, I guess, success, money, that kind of thing, because it's like, well, I can't be in the military anymore, so might as well chase money now and try and build an empire. It's that kind of, which again is a fool's errand, because when's enough ever enough? And we were just adding more and adding more and adding more. So even though life was going well, I think not having that focus on my faith and kind of having quietened down on my faith life, I was filling the hole with the wrong kind of thing. And that obviously came at a consequence as well. Sort of a bit later on. Yeah.
What do you mean a bit later on?
So I mean that's kind of what got us to where I am today.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, so things kind of went well. We, family grew, ended up with 4 kids, just a lot of pressure, but there was a lot of focus on like my injuries and me and whatever. So around sort of 2018. I was very blessed, and I've done a lot of things. I've done, I've been skydiving, I got my free fall license, I've done all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Skiing and, things that I otherwise, I don't know when, obviously would have done it in the military at some point, but, so it was pretty great. But I think, because my focus was, there was tension at home, and I think the tension was probably from the fact that, I was probably in some ways trying to fill this hole in my life, chasing things, doing more things, whatever, which inevitably put strain on the relationship at home, because it's like, okay, well, he's chasing the next thing and he's chasing the next thing, kind of what about us back here? And obviously Sadie was also going through her own thing at the time. We kind of just, I guess we just had our focus in slightly the wrong place, is probably the shortest way to put it. And then in 2018, I relived what happened to me. I just told it, because obviously there was a whole, again, I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, okay, well, what I've been through is definitely something that could help others by sharing my story and that kind of stuff. And I think the way that I went about doing that was probably, too hard, too fast. Wasn't quite ready for that kind of thing. And again, in my own strength. And I remember sharing it to an audience, completely reliving it. And then it just kind of made my head go, just kind of exploded for a bit. And then I was like, hang on, I'm back in that position where I've got this void in my life. I can't fill it. It's, life at home is so strenuous, and that I don't seem to be able to do things right. And just like a complete head wobble. And then really questioning everything, questioning, the business, questioning, the choices that I've made, questioning where I am in life, questioning where I want to be, where I want to go, and then it came back to, okay, well, I can't be in the military anymore. It's almost like a full circle. Okay, well, I missed the military, and I can't ever do anything to replace that, and I still can't do anything to ever get me close to where I hope to have been within the military. So, and it seemed then that everything I was trying to do, I was trying to kind of, it's the chip on my shoulder, and I was trying to kind of service that. Yeah. But nothing ever did. And then, we obviously, the cracks started appearing at home. And then, like I said, I went away and came back, and I was just then convinced, thinking, right, well, we're not going anywhere. This is just getting worse, whatever, that perhaps maybe the best thing would be for us to part ways, for Sadie and I, because she's not happy, I'm not happy, the kids aren't really happy, that kind of thing, because, so it was a very strange moment, but my head just erupted, and but I was convinced I was doing the right thing, and then ended the relationship and ended up kind of moving out, thinking that perhaps if I move out and I'm on my own, whatever. So again, trying to fill a hole, trying to find ways to fill the hole. Nothing was really working, because now I'm on my own. Things are actually getting from bad to worse, because I don't have my kids around me all the time, even though I was seeing them every day, but it just wasn't the same. And nothing I tried to do was helping. Yeah. And everything I tried to fix was just kind of making it worse. So it's like literally like just crash bang walloping my way through, thinking it's going to work, but it just didn't. It had like the opposite effect. And I was like, for goodness sake. And then I got to a point where I was then starting to contemplate like suicide, because I was just like, well, nothing's really, I can't do anything right. I can't do anything right by Sadie. I can't do anything right by my children. I can't do anything right by the business, because that's struggling. I started another business chasing money. I can't do anything right by that. That's falling apart. It's just so many things. I lived in a flat, and it was, a pretty dark time. But again, the only thing I didn't do was faith. I didn't go back to my faith. So even though I was still a Christian, I wasn't, I wasn't living like a Christian should in that respect, obviously having that relationship with God. And
or in the way that you would have seen yourself wanting to, right?
Yeah. Then so when I got to that point, there was just obviously my family being abroad. I didn't tell them anything either, so I was kind of keeping it all. And then Sadie obviously spoke to them about it, and they're like then phoning up, what's going on? And then I'm even more angry because I didn't want them to know, and it's like all kind of. But I had some good friends around me. My family then started mustering around me, and my mum and my dad both spoke to me individually, but they were always just saying, look, you need to turn back to the Lord, because that's He's the one that's going to help you through this, because you cannot do this on your own. And a penny kind of dropped, and I did that, and I turned back to my faith, and I just prayed, and obviously just asked God to help out. And obviously there's still consequences to actions, but, obviously, and I still had to go through that whole healing process. But within that, I ended up getting rid of that one business, that it was, that was just kind of spiraling. Started off really well, but then just a few unforeseen circumstances just meant it was then spiraling. So financial pressure was just immense. But anyway, ended up closing that one, and that was actually a relief. I lost some money on there as well, but, so
in terms of you sort of turning back to God, was that like a process? Was that like over weeks? Was that like a did you sort of, was it when you were out and about at some stage? How did you return? I
was very much isolated in the flat. I don't really go out much. I was like in a deep depression basically. I didn't really go out much, didn't really, so it was very much in the flat, to be honest. And obviously just took the Bible, just started reading the Bible again, just wrote some questions that I had, just prayed about it, asking for some answers. I mean, that was the moment. So I was listening to this sermon by Stephan van Niekirk called "Your Struggle is a Setup," and it's all about how, the enemy. So, some people may think there's a God, but a lot of people seem to forget that there's a devil too. And he also has a plan for us. He also wants to try and kill, steal and destroy. That's his main mission. And obviously a lot of evil in the world comes from him. And even though we don't always necessarily avoid that, but God will use that in order to put us somewhere greater. And he was using the story of Jesus, for example. The devil thought that he trapped Jesus on the cross and that he's finally getting rid of Jesus. But actually, that struggle was a setup for eternal salvation for us. That's actually Jesus was setting up death, hell, and the grave on that cross, knowing that in 3 days' time, when he gets up again, that he would have defeated it. But the devil wouldn't have known this. And it's just, but the way that it just resonated with me, that he obviously puts it into our terms, in that perhaps what we're going through, it may be extremely painful, it may be whatever, but God will do something with that if we allow him to, that this is the setup for something much greater from all this pain. And he uses a lot of references within the word about how, God's used really difficult circumstances for his people and basically elevated them to a point where, obviously they were not only healed, but they obviously prospered in life and spirit and, in all aspects, not necessarily financially, but but I mean, look at David, for example, without going off on too much of a tangent, but that's what an example, King David of his life and what he's gone through, and so on. And Jacob, there's Moses, there's all sorts of examples, but just that realization though, when he spoke about like Jesus dying on a cross, just that hit me hard. And I don't cry often, but I wept uncontrollably. I didn't know where it came from, but I just really wept because it just really sunk in at the age of 38. Bearing in mind, I've known since a young age that Jesus died for me on a cross for my sin, that my sins can be forgiven. But that really sunk in that moment about what he's gone through for me. For what I've done in the past, for what I'm doing today, for what I'm going to do in the future, because of how much he loves me, how much he wants me to succeed, how much he wants, and despite all the things, all the mistakes that I've made, despite all the anger, despite all of these things that, I just got to give him a chance, and he'll help me deal with that. And, and I just had this whole feeling of, actually, I've been washed clean of all the old stuff. I've been washed clean from all the crap and from all the mistakes and so on. And it was just such a liberating moment. And that's the moment for me. And I remember it's on the 11th of July. That's the moment where I was like, yeah, actually, this is really the moment that I've truly surrendered my heart to Jesus and truly accepted him as my Lord and Savior. And I think the change that I experienced, obviously I said earlier about what that was like to be baptized, but this was, I changed as a person in so many different ways, just not even on purpose, but just like I've got, for example, I was never really a big drinker anyway. I would obviously go and drink and obviously have a night out with the lads, and I've obviously had a few nights or a few mornings where I wake up, whatever, but now it's just
soldier.
But it's just like, I've just lost all interest. I still enjoy the social aspect of it, but it's just, but I don't really drink now, and I don't really, like swearing. I just stopped swearing, or I've just almost like cleaned my life up, if that makes sense. So really being a lot more focused on, like the spiritual kind of well-being, but also physical, whatever, and the message and image that I give towards my children. And I just became such a changed person. It was just like, whoa, this is new. And that's when my mum said to me, she's like, look, you can't do this on your own. You are about to enter into a big battle. And she said, not just because of the divorce, but it seems that there's something spiritually happening in your life right now. You need to get plugged in somewhere, because you cannot face this on your own. And it's good to listen to sermons online, whatever, but it's not the same as being in amongst a group of people who are all there worshipping and whatever, who can then give a message or what, it just isn't the same. So I was like, okay. So then I started searching for a church, and I came across this church called Living Lights in Taunton, and obviously prayed about it, and showed my dad, and my dad's, it looks pretty good and whatever. So I went along, and that was amazing. Just met quite a few South Africans there, and just the community was it was something that I had not expected. But then suddenly the answer to the prayer of a friend like Tom, but not just one, there's multiple, and just being closer to the Lord. I'm closer to him now than what I'd ever been, but just more, even when I read the scriptures now, just how it speaks to me, and like the understanding I get now is far deeper than what I ever had before. So there's like just this huge transformation, and so I don't know when things are going to end. I don't know. I mean, it's still ongoing. The divorce still isn't finished yet, but I've got no worries. Obviously, I'll probably have to elaborate on that. There are concerns because I don't know how it's going to end or when, but I know that even at its worst, I've got that confidence again that I'll be looked after. A bit like the confidence I had just before the first Afghan. It's like if God's with me, I don't have to worry about it. So there's just been such a learning curve, and I just want to go from somebody who would read and pray. Obviously I pray daily anyway, and apart from that, in between number of years, I would have like a daily prayer life at least. But almost like did it sometimes because I felt that I had to. Whereas now, it's sometimes just want to get in a word, and it's like, actually I don't want to watch TV tonight. I want to read, and I'll just get in a Bible, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? This is new. I've never been like this before, and it's just really strange. Yeah. So it's but the learning I've had and the growth has just been phenomenal.
So what are you turning that into? Obviously, I became aware of you through what you were doing, this sort of nutty bike ride with Adaptive Grand Slam. What's kind of coming together for you right now then?
What's coming
like
together?
There's some sort of redemptive stuff going on, isn't there?
Yes. I think at the moment there's glimpses. I don't think I fully know exactly what's coming together just yet. I think I now have clarity into what my purpose is, like making sense of everything that I've gone through and what that's for. And ultimately it's still the same as before, which is to help other people, but now it's just on a far bigger level, I guess, than what it would have been. I mean, as a soldier, you help people, don't get me wrong, but you're very encapsulated in a point in time.
Yeah.
And you're there and you make a difference while you're there, but as soon as you're gone, that's it. Whereas now it could last a lot longer, but it's not just about physically helping people, it's about spiritually helping people, because we can see what's going on in the world, and we can see that people out there are hungry, and there are a lot of lost people, and there's definitely something happening. So, but the glimpses at the moment definitely points towards using what I have in order to, like the cycling, for example. I happen to have just enough of my body left to be able to do something like that. And, I've developed enough resilience to also be able to do that. Then obviously there's the network, the guys from Adaptive Grand Slam and so on, who are then able to make and then help me make that happen. And I feel that that's only kind of just getting going, and there'll be more of that. I think there's more in the lines. Obviously there's the manuscript that is sort of being finished, or that I've finished that, but it's now going for all the editing side of stuff, which really focuses on everything I've learned throughout this whole time frame. But more the lessons. It's not really about me, and that's the thing. It's not really about me. It's about what it could do for others, and that's kind of and then there's also the you know, obviously, but like reaching out to other people with stories too, and kind of using that or collaborating on those things in order to reach more people, if that makes sense. So that's definitely what the glimpses seem to point towards, and I guess some form of teaching in one way, but more like scriptural rather than like educational. Whether it's just the lessons that I've learned or whether it's actually spiritual stuff or whatever, but it just seems like it's all kind of heading that way. So yeah, at the moment, it's patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Well, thank you. It's been an epic one. Yeah, please subscribe to Stephan's channel, this channel, yeah, follow him for what will be coming up. And yeah, thanks ever so much for your time.
No, thank you.
I feel like we probably need a
Yes.
need a beer or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel like there's going to be lots I'm going to be thinking about. So yeah, thank you.
That's good. That's it. And there's so much more that could be talked about, like experiences with the church and.
Yeah.
I know. Try not to hit.
Oh no, don't. Oh yeah, well managed.
Yeah.
What time's your train?
6:40.
Oh, we've got ages.
Yeah, it's
Have we?
got 40 minutes.
Oh, fine. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, from Red Hill or...
Red Hill, yeah.
Where's it going?
It's Red Hill to Reading.
Oh, it is that one? Okay,
yeah,
fine.
Reading to Taunton.
Yeah, we need to hop skip then.